This episode, we are covering everything digital signage, get into some specific takeaways, so literal takeaways as in hospitality outlets, but also some practical tips and advice, joined by Dee from BrightSign and Nils from Sharp, talking a little bit about the size of the market and the wealth of opportunities presented by digital signage. We get into some of the challenges that you might get into and also how those challenges can be turned into opportunities, demystifying the market, so some of the jargon and the buzzwords that you get and how what that actually means in practical terms. We talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls to avoid, and we've got some really specific and practical advice to BlueStar resellers who are not already involved in signage, how they might get a little bit more involved in that. And I hope you have as much fun listening to this one as we did making it. So hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Ask Blue podcast. I'm Richard Austin still, and today we're going to talk about digital signage. Why digital signage? Well, it's a new area for us. It's kind of a new area, kind of not a new area. We've been involved in this for a good while with BrightSign, and we've recently expanded our range with starting to work with Sharp and also with quite a few CMS providers, which we'll get into a little bit later, no doubt, as well. So it's a new area, it's a new focus for us, or at least an increased focus for us. So to help out with that, I've brought in a couple of industry experts to help us get into that. Just a bit of a preamble, I'm going to read out these statistics so that I don't get them wrong this time, like I did with the self-service market, where I said it was a 9 million opportunity, when it's in fact 9 billion. So the global digital signage market was valued at around about $25 billion US in 2022, and it's expected to reach around 40 billion. So that's more than doubling in size by 2030. European digital signage market, again in US dollars, just short of 8 billion in 2023 and expected to get close to 16 billion. That's billion, not million, by 2033. So again, some extremely good growth there. That's a compound annual growth rate of 7.3% for the recent years. So the long story short, this is a really interesting market for BlueStar. We're growing our offering here, we're growing our line card, and as I said, I brought in a couple of industry experts. So Nils, Aferdita, welcome to both of you.
Thank
you. Let's start with some introductions, because obviously I know you both reasonably well now, but Aferdita or Dee, I can never work out whether I'm going to call you Dee or Aferdita. I'll probably resort to Dee just because it's a little bit easier. But yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, well, my background is actually partnerships, and whether it's channel, whether it's technical partnerships, whether it's ISVs, that's pretty much what I've been doing for more than 15 years now. And at BrightSign, where I currently am, and I've been here for 3 years, the partner model is basically how the company operates. So everything is done through the channel, the reseller systems integrators, and of course working with our CMS partners, which you highlighted earlier. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that that's core as a business model for us. And my role specifically is as a senior partner manager. I look after all the CMS partners outside of the US. So the likes of Avexi, now Signage, etc., all the ones that are in the ecosystem. And those are the platforms that will run on the BrightSign devices to be able to get the right content to the right place at the right time.
Great stuff. And just for the context of people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of BrightSign, mm-hmm. at least, but just to make it absolutely clear, tell us a little bit about BrightSign and what the company does.
So we make the purple media players. If people haven't seen them, and if they have, they'll go, "Oh, that's what that was sticking in the back of the screen."
Everything's purple. I love the BrightSign colours. Yeah. You've got the purple shirt. You can't see under the desk, but you're even wearing the purple trainers today as well. Yeah.
Maybe one point I might be flexible enough to lift my leg up, but not for now.
It's not a requirement of the podcast. No. Yeah.
So we make the purple media players, and to simplify everything, because it doesn't need to be complicated, is that device is then making the screen drive the content that you want to put on there. Nice and simple. So if you've ever seen a digital menu board, whether it's KFC, McDonald's, Subway, you name it, or even in hospitals, waiting areas, what have you, that's a good chance that it's got BrightSign behind the screen. We are known as the global market leader with over 3 million players that have been sold. This is my little
3 million.
Over 3 million, yeah.
Not billion.
No, I'd be a millionaire if that was the case. No, 3 million.
This time, yeah.
But yes,
Good stuff,
and
yeah.
the biggest reason for that, because people say, well, you've got a big reach, you've been around for a long time, this is why that's big numbers. But actually, the numbers are large for the specific reason that it's the reliability side.
Excellent. Okay, Nils, do you want to same questions to you basically? Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, your career journey, and what brought you to here?
Absolutely.
I mean, not to here today. I mean, I know you walked from your hotel, but
totally clear.
Yeah.
I decided when I was 3 years old to break into the AV industry. No, it's
your local college was doing a course at that time, weren't they?
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, and I heard about BrightSign, and I thought, like, this is something I'm really interested in. No, actually, it's a funny, let's say, movements I went through to end up at Sharp. I started at the early age making music and played instruments and all this, and but I always decided I don't want to be dependent on making music. I want to study something that is relevant for me on the business side. So,
what instruments do you play?
Piano and trumpet.
Excellent.
But I studied business economics after finishing school, and I wanted to do something like a real proper job. And interesting wise, somebody asked me, hey, there's a US company that they're looking for somebody driving their business within Europe. And so I started working for a US company after university. Yeah. Ended up with being a global sales director for a company.
So that's a musical instrument company.
Correct.
Can you say who it was?
In the AV industry, it was Gibson.
Okay.
Back in the days.
Gibson. I mean, that's guitars, right?
That's guitars, yeah. But they also had an electronic section with speaker systems and all this. And so I've been at all the big shows, the NAMs, the ISEs.
Yeah. Okay. Because the ISE show that we were all at in February in Barcelona, that's
correct.
It's AV, but we're there primarily because we're interested in the screens and the players that power it. But there's a huge focus in some of the halls there on the sound equipment as well. So yeah, I knew you were into music.
Yeah, so I was in AV, and so and then somebody from back in the days, NEC, came along and said, like, hey, you're managing so many different areas, distribution globally, partners and all this. We're looking for somebody that manages all our ecosystem partners, alliance managers. And so I started at that time to build the ecosystems for NEC and make sure that we're, compatible with all the different CMS companies from a hardware perspective. And now, my current role, I'm the business segment lead for retail, and then also handling all the partner management for all the European CMS companies, and making sure that we're, developing in specific vertical markets the footprint of Sharp.
Yeah, and so also just tell us a little bit about Sharp as well, because obviously you mentioned NEC there too, and then Sharp. I think everybody's heard of Sharp from various different products, whether it's the professional display screens or some of the other stuff you do, even point of sale terminals, which obviously is a big part of our business. But yeah, just tell us a bit of position Sharp. Who are they? What do they do? Or specifically, what does your part of Sharp do?
Sharp is a $30 billion company owned by Foxconn. And they also had various areas where they're active in printing, IT, as well as displays. And 5 years ago, they acquired the majority of the display section from NEC. And so that acquisition now ended up for the last 5 years in being the legal entity Sharp NEC. And after this acquisitional period now, we're fully embedded into the Sharp ecosystem. So we're all like wearing Sharp shirts, and it's really cool. It's a great brand.
It'd be cooler if it was purple.
Well, actually, it should be red, but it's
okay.
I'm kind of like, I think red on a black shirt doesn't match that well.
It would clash with your chair, so yeah, it's fine.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Great. Well, obviously, I know you both, but thanks for introducing yourselves, and great to have you here today. I know you've, certainly you, Nils, have travelled a fair distance to be with us, so appreciate that. But just before we get into the detail of this, let's be really clear. What exactly is it that we mean by digital signage? I think it's important to stress that, because I think it's one of those things, like it's a bit like kiosks. Kiosks means different things to different people. We might we might think it means somewhere where you go and order food in a quick service restaurant, but it can mean it could be a snack bar at the side of the road or something like that. Digital signage, again, I think it's open to different interpretation.
Yeah.
What's your, how would you describe digital signage and what it involves?
I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and it's a question that when I talk to people outside of the industry, they also look at me with a blank look on their face, like when I say digital signage, that's where I work. Like, and then you just mention, well, actually, if you've ever seen a billboard or a promotional display in a retail window, they go, then you have the penny drop moment. So, at its basic, it's basically a screen, which is its purpose is more than just being on and watching TV, but you've got promotional content relevant to wherever it might be sitting in terms of placement. And pretty much.
Then wherever it might be sitting, I mean, that's what's been really interesting to me about getting into digital signage. I mean, we come at this from the retail and hospitality angle, and I know that's a particular focus for you, Nils. It's probably the most obvious vertical that it goes into. But I spoke to our sales team at the sales kickoff earlier this year, and I was really trying to hammer home the point. This is not just for POS, it's not just for retail and hospitality. It's the use cases for digital signage are in many different verticals. You mentioned healthcare there. We talked a bit about manufacturing, transport and logistics, outdoor spaces, public spaces, airports. It's screens are everywhere. They're not just in the palm of our hands. They're probably more often than they should be in the palm of our hands. They're also around a lot as well. So
but I think if we were to have this podcast 15 years ago, then retail would be the first and foremost area that most people would associate with digital signage. And I think it did well as an industry to kind of pave the way for other industries to then see the benefits of it. So, if you give an example of the conversations that you would have been having 15 years ago would have been why you should do digital signage. Whereas now it's not a case of why you should do it, it's how do I get the most out of it? Because I'm going to do it anyway. So I need to make sure that, the usual caveats of return on investment and actually am I putting the right screens in the right place? Are the questions that are being asked now. So it's definitely come a long way.
I think the one word that frames it the best, in my opinion, over the years it's the visualization of content and messages. And I think that can be anything from you want to advertise a product, you want to pollute a message and say like a warning message, you can't go here. Goes into the whole area of wayfinding as well. Everything that's dynamic content, I think, is related to signage, because I think that's a key differentiation from putting a poster up there. A poster is static. A poster cannot react to something, but digital signage can be controlled or either over network, remotely, or even just with the content you upload on the screen. But it's a very, very different connection that you can build to the audience than just hanging a poster.
I like that the what you said, visualization of content and message. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, and I think it's absolutely right what you say. The fact that I think increasingly we are, because of the amount of time we spend on our smartphones, we're conditioned to be looking out for moving video. Anything that's brightly coloured, moving quickly, is something that we're I guess we've probably always been drawn to that because of who we are as human beings. But certainly I can imagine at the moment it's even more appealing to us because, and especially the format. Obviously, you can mount a screen either landscape or portrait. You mount that screen portrait, and it's what you're seeing on the wall in the bus station is exactly. It looks very similar to the highly addictive thing that you're holding in the palm of your hand. So
psychologically, I think you often see on signage areas people walk away from the landscape, from placing a display horizontal because it's been considered as TV and they run a show. But if you put it in a vertical mode, it's more modernized and it's more I think it distracts better and captures the attention better from people than in landscape. Plus, I think another element that digital signage brings versus a poster is it allows to interact with the audience. It allows to communicate something and communicate with the audience and not just having a static message.
No, really, really good points.
And I think one clarification to make, because I'm kind of thinking back in conversations that I've had with resellers over the years. When we were still very much doing the education about what is digital signage, it isn't about CCTV or video conferencing, because there is a whole world out there.
Yeah.
IC is a prime example of all those different products. Yes, they go hand in hand together, and they are parts of what a company might have, in their premises, but not to be confused with digital signage, because that's something that's completely different.
Yeah. Are there other things that digital signage is not? Is there anything else that you would...
So broadcast TV, for instance.
Right, yeah.
Now we can there are digital signage companies and CMSs, and of course BrightSign will support, and so would Sharp, where you can take such a live stream, for instance, a sports venue might be showing that on their screens alongside other promotions, but that's not it is very much an IPTV thing. That's a segmentation within digital signage.
Excellent. Okay, very good. And let's put ourselves in the position of a BlueStar reseller, maybe who's not already involved in digital signage. We think that there are a lot of opportunities for our resellers to get much more involved in that. We're putting together some resources to help them to do that. In your experience, if a reseller looks at this market for the first time, what's their reaction? Are they excited, confused, overwhelmed?
I think you will have, of course, varying types of answers, but I think overall, and again, I'm basing this on conversations with people that haven't necessarily always been about digital signage as a company. It'll be a case of, that looks interesting, but it's somebody else's problem because they haven't done it before, and maybe they're doing the video conferencing, or maybe they're doing something else, and
maybe it's not somebody else's problem. Maybe it's somebody else's opportunity.
Absolutely right. That's exactly the point. And a lot of the time, no, it's good, because that's what I was going to say. And a lot of the time, they'll be thinking, well, actually, it looks a little bit complicated. I gotta, how many components do I need to bring together? There's the software, there's this and that. So I think there's a little bit of apprehensiveness that probably comes with that if you're brand new to specifically the digital signage market. But, at the end of the day, I would always say to people, and this is coming from somebody that does do this, don't overthink it. The technology is simpler than it looks. All that, the skills that are needed aren't technical as such, because, at the end of the day, you're putting a screen on a wall and you're connecting media player with HDMI. But it's
already sounds quite difficult to somebody with high level of DIY skills.
But I think at the end, it also depends on the personality of each of the people that are involved. I mean, I always, people often laugh about me because I come up with examples on cars or
analogies.
Analogies,
definitely.
But I think that clarifies stuff a little bit. I mean, somebody that really loves to cook, for him, it's not complicated to create this immersive sauce. Somebody like a friend of mine who actually doesn't cook at all, for him it's complicated to open the box of the noodles and put powder into water and try to create a sauce. It's just like
a delicious pot noodle.
How do I do this? And then celebrates. It's just like, I cook pasta, and like, no, you actually warmed it up.
Chinese chicken flavor.
Yeah. So, and I think it's the same with signage or with technology. If you're really deeply involved, and you think like, wow, this is an area I want to grow with, as you said, it's not so dramatically complicated. But if you're a total newbie and you have no idea about an infrastructure of IT systems, you have no idea what a computer does, well, your learning curve is higher. But I mean, on the other hand, signage, like you said, 15 years ago has been, on the one hand, easier, but also more complicated because many things have not been pre-scripted. Now, if you install a CMS system, I mean, it's so simple and so easy. Most of the companies have a really, really good workflow how to get software onto a computer or onto a screen. It's not that dramatic.
This is my view as well, and this is why I'm so passionate about pushing this newish technology into or new to our resellers. This area which could be new for our resellers. I don't. It looks really cool. It looks complicated because it looks kind of seamless. But in actual fact, there's four elements to it. You've got the screens, you've got the media players, you've got the mounting brackets for those, which we provide as well, and then you've got the CMS platform. All right, there's probably a little bit more to it in certain applications, but fundamentally, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And what we've worked really hard to do together with yourselves is to put together a package that makes it easy for resellers to start doing that. I mean, am I overlooking something, or is it really that straightforward?
No, I mean, ultimately, that's the infrastructure that will get your content to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think the only time that certain things get overlooked, and it's a potential pitfall, which I know that we're going to cover a little bit later, but is that people forget to ask the question of, okay, what is it that you want to say? to that end customer. Because if you don't know what that content is going to be, then you can't answer where that screen can go, what kind of screen it can be, what kind of media player, etc., etc. You know, a wall-mounted bracket versus one on a pole, because it might be high bright in window, that kind of stuff. Well, you won't be able to get those answers, right? Yeah. So it's important to not forget about the content, or at least not leave it last, which a lot of times still happens.
Yeah, I know that's an area that you're particularly passionate about.
Yes.
You know what you just mentioned. I think if you look at the elements you need to run signage, that's correct. You need the software, you need the hardware, you need the infrastructure, so the player and the display. But when you then start to dive deeper, and it's the same thing. Like, okay, I need a car. Okay, great. How many car manufacturers are out there? Oh, what features do I want? Oh. Which tires do I want? What's the purpose?
That sounds exactly like me walking into the ISE show in Barcelona for the first time. I think it was maybe 3-4 years ago. You walk in there, there's 6 halls. It's huge. It was, I mean, what was it? Something like 200,000 people attended. 200 billion people attended that show in February this year. The biggest show of its kind. It was absolutely huge. And you walk into that show, and it's overwhelming. I mean, like I said to you before, the first hall that I walked into was the hall of sound, the wall of sound. And you go in there, it's like, I don't see any screens anywhere, but there's so much choice of different. And obviously then you get to, there's 2 or 3 main halls where you've got most of the actual signage and content being displayed. And it is overwhelming because it's visually overwhelming as well. You've got these massive screens everywhere. I
call Hall 4 the Sunshine Hall because of all the LEDs.
You
I mean, get a suntan.
Imagine the electricity bill for Hall 4. It must be. And I think, is it the sheer volume of choice that's available to people getting into the market? Is that one of the things that makes it so?
I think yes and no. We need to have the choice. I think it's important to have the choice because that's what helps bring the cost down ultimately for everybody to then have an easier, no more high barriers to entry, because cost is always one of the most prohibitive points, right? But at the same time, when it becomes a commodity, then you do have to sift through a lot of what's out there to make the right choices for your customer. So yeah, it's a nice problem to have as well. You wouldn't want it any other way, but that means that you need to, again, do your research. But I would say to the reseller, you don't need to become the expert yourself. Rely on your partners, Sharps of the world, the BrightSign of the world, the BlueStars of the world, because they've done the research for you.
And
this is why they have. Right? Yeah, absolutely. That's why they've got the brands that they have that they're offering, because they've gone out there and done the research themselves. So it's nice and easy for them to then say, rather than sifting through 15 or 20 or more, you just say, okay, here's my top 3. I'm going to get my hands dirty with them. And then from a CMS perspective and a media player and screen, and then get a feel for what's going to work.
One thing that I also think is important to understand is that many choices that clients make or partners make might even not be a choice for the rest of their life. So we as hardware manufacturers, like BrightSign, the same thing as we try to be as much compatible as possible to the software companies out there, and the same on the software side. So let's say you decide to run with software A, and which is compatible to BrightSign, and you figure out in the later stage, oh, my client wants something completely different, or something that is more compelling to his needs. You can pick between 200 CMS companies being supported on BrightSign. I mean, if the one is not the choice that will help you getting through whatever you want to accomplish, well, you change the system and you install maybe a different CMS system. Or the same on our lineups with built-in SoCs. We come to this later, I guess. You can install a different software, and I think it's important that you pick the right hardware in the beginning, and I think then the rest you can even maneuver through over the time.
Yeah, and that raises a really interesting point, I think, Nils, is that to some resellers, these challenges are simply problems that they're not really prepared to get involved in. They don't see them as their problems. But I think because it's, potentially there's, it seems like a challenging market to get into for ones who are prepared to invest a little bit into that. There's a hell of a lot of opportunity out there. And I guess as a starting point, let's start with what's familiar for a lot of our resellers. is starting with their existing customers. Is that the logical place to get started if they're not already involved in digital signage but want to be?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why they should be excited about it, because they don't have to go and find completely new business out there. They've already got the relationships with those end customers. So that's effectively your pipeline. You don't need to find anything to sell signage into. You just have the conversation. If you walk into the restaurant or the shop that you're already, supplying other things to, well, you just look at the walls. Have they got printed signage where instead there could have been digital? Anything that might already be a screen, but actually there's a USB sticks in the back of it as opposed to an actual media player to get the dynamic content. Any of the blank walls behind counters, there's countless opportunities. So I think, make the most of having those relationships, because that's your foot in the door. And then the technology is already there, so you don't need to worry about it. It's just a case of asking the right questions.
I mean, to me, it's logical that if you're in point of sale or self-service, asking exactly that question.
Absolutely.
But also for people who are perhaps selling to hospitals or factories or transport and logistics, to say, ask their customers that question. Are you looking at putting screens to give information out to your patients, your employees, your visitors, that kind of thing? That would seem to me to be a good starting point, because I think a lot of businesses, a lot of end customers, so our customers are probably thinking about this, right?
Yeah. And if they're not asking the question, well, then their competitor is. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. Yeah. And
I still just want to add, I still think it also relates to not only the client base, but also to the knowledge that the person or the reseller already has within computing. Because I think once you go into signage, you add to this whole AV section, you also add IT. Mm-hmm. And if you're only in IT, you all of a sudden add AV. So I think that the digital signage world combines both, and running digital signage systems is more just patching cables and running a network and saying like, well, I don't care about the content. I think you also need to have a certain desire and understanding of exciting your clients about the way that they can interact with their clients and with their customers, and giving them an appetite on, you can do really cool stuff with your clients. It's not about hanging hardware on the wall. I think it depends on the personality of the people that want to get into it.
I mean, giving them an appetite is a great way of putting it, because if you think about digital menu boards in hospitality, you've got a static poster on the wall that says, here's numbers
Sold
1
out
to 68 of different choices of food, or you can actually show dynamic content video of what that food really looks like, and perhaps even.
And when it's McDonald's case, it doesn't actually look like the pictures, but nonetheless.
McDonald's are not alone in this.
Plus, I also think that if you are a reseller, you also at a certain stage think about, do I want to stick to my reseller role, or also want to help and interact with the client and become a little, to a certain degree, even somebody that helps them with integrating the stuff.
Advisor.
And a trusted advisor, correct. I think that's what you also need to keep in mind.
I mean, if I think about what our point of sale resellers, for example, have to know, they've got to understand point of sale. They've got to understand payments, which is a really complicated area. All the legislation around that, how that has to be integrated, how that has to work. To me, digital signage is relatively straightforward compared to that. It's more, and I think as well, you mentioned IT and the resellers that are primarily focused on IT. It's very much adjacent to that, isn't it? If you understand how a computer works, then you understand how a signage screen works, right?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that if you, let's say you have a conferencing system, you are aware of that. In conferencing like IPTV or something, you also are already aware that you need to run updates on the systems. You cannot just rely on, you put the screen there or install the meeting room and say like, okay, thank you, customer, we won't see each other again. You also should, to a certain degree, guide the client and help him, fostering updates and all this. And this is what's happening with signage as well. We as hardware manufacturers, we can do this up to a certain stage, and we can support clients up to a certain stage. Like the displays we have, some of them even have an over-the-air update mechanism, so they don't need to worry about the updating of the operating system. The same for CMS companies. Most of the CMS companies have a mechanism that updates the system itself. Still, there are security patches you want to have, and security, that is a key asset of those systems. I think you need to dive a little deeper, and not just think about, I'm expanding by doing digital signage and hanging the screen and putting a media player. It's a little bit more.
And I think one thing that's going to be music to the ears of a lot of our resellers is the recurring revenue opportunity that there is within digital signage. It's not you just, like you just said, Nils, it's not you just whack the screens on the wall, walk away and find another wall to whack some screens onto. You need to the screens mostly will need some sort of software to manage them, particularly in a larger store, for example, or a chain of factories, for example. The managing that content, making sure that it's consistent in either consistent in all locations or specific to the locations, perhaps managed centrally as well as being managed in the locations themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, recurring revenue and the CMS software, that's a huge thing, right?
Absolutely. And you see, you don't have to know exactly how to manage recurring revenue as such. At the end of the day, you need to think about it as, okay, hardware is a one-time sale. Signage piece, from the CMS perspective, so that's the software, that's what's going to help you become stickier with your customer, because you're not just selling it and forgetting about it, which is sometimes what happens. You're in there making sure that not only have they got the service up and running, but also the right content. And then when it comes to the renewal stage, your relationship is, stronger potentially with that customer rather than just providing a product. You're providing a service. And, whether it's the CMS, whether it's the remote management, which is vitally important for larger scale deployments, we can talk about small, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 10 screens, which you can do, the hanging and banging for. But the minute that it becomes a little bit more scalable than that, the remote device management is a must. And all of the CMSs provide it. BrightSign has the opportunity, and of course within the BrightSign, the Sharp system on chip devices, you can do that over the air remote updates if you're in Timbuktu, should you wish to.
The way I like to put this to a lot of our resellers are in automatic identification, so they're doing mobile computing. We work with, for example, 42 Gears, that remote management software. They're already doing that. There's a lot of similarities between 42 Gears and the CMS providers that we work with. So something has to take control of those screens remotely, right? I guess if I do make that comparison, say 42 Gears, we've got a handful of SOTIs, another one in the Auto ID world that's very, very popular as well. But it seems like you mentioned 200 CMS providers that you could choose from. It seems like it's quite a complicated. How do you start with making a choice between 200 different CMS providers?
I mean, there are different variables you can look at. It's the use case, the purpose of what I want to accomplish with my signage system. What is the area I'm in? What is the region I'm in? Many companies and resellers that we work with, they prefer having a CMS company that is regional based. I mean, do you want to pick a company that's based in Scandinavia when you live in Spain? Potentially not. You potentially pick somebody that is in Spain that speaks your native language. You can call a help desk. So that's already narrowing down the amount of CMS companies you take a look at. If you have a global rollout, well, then this goes away and you have a company that is like globally scaled and is also globally operated. And then you work with those for any of the corporate clients or enterprise clients. They use a CMS company that can cover that as well.
Yeah, I guess, compatibility with the hardware is an important thing as well. We want to make sure that the CMS partners that we're working with are working with the hardware that we sell too. From our point of view, we've logically fallen in with just a handful of 4 or 5 CMS providers. And Ivexi, for example, we've actually started to resell their digital signage CMS software. So that's been a really good partnership. We had Andrew Broster from Ivexi on the podcast a few months ago. Really interesting conversation as well. I think BlueStar can already help with that, but we are open to additional partnerships if we logically need to. If we do quite a bit with Now Signage, and they're very, very strong in the UK. Potential to work outside of there as well. And obviously we're pan-European. We need to be we need to make sure that we're working with the right CMS partners and the right to support resellers in the right countries as well.
Yeah, I mean, having come from the software background in digital signage, I think I've seen it from that perspective where people have said, okay, look, there's over 2,000 CMS companies out there, and probably now there's more because obviously with AI, of course, we have to include something. So
we got a good 30 minutes into the podcast without saying the AI word.
What I'm trying to say is that I'm not a technical person, and I could build something. Barrier to entry from that perspective is very, very low. And this is why the reseller shouldn't think about, oh, Google, help me out, because Google's not going to help you if you say digital signage software. It's just going to come up with a plethora of God knows how many. So go to your vendors like Sharp, like BrightSign, like whoever, because they've got those partner programs where they say, okay, we've done the hard work for you. Yes, there are 200 or however many that have done the technical integration, but there's a reason behind the ones that we've worked with. We've got 27 that are part of Bright Alliance. And there's reasons for that, not just the technical integration, but also, like you say, the global reach, the localization, the specific vertical industry that they might be good at, like in retail media networks or whatever the case might be. So use that to their advantage rather than having to do the hard work. If you want to, of course, go out there and do it, but it'll take time. So don't reinvent the wheel. Look at what people are doing and what makes sense.
So here's a question for both of you, right? So you've got a software background. You're very much involved in the software partnerships, the CMS partnerships at BrightSign. Nils, I'm probably a hardware guy. You're like me. You work for Sharp. You're more interested in the hardware, perhaps. Where do you start? Do you start with the software or do you start with the hardware? Fight.
Well, I think there is actually no fight because at the end it just matters what the end.
We want to see a fight though.
Well, it won't happen. I mean, as long as you don't pull in a dinosaur, I think we're good.
No one wants to fight a dinosaur.
Yeah, I think there. It depends on the client and what comes first. It's a chicken and an egg question, and I think I put myself into because that's what the discussion is all about, and the situation of the reseller. And I'm approaching a client and I say, look, I heard you want to do signage, and the first question I would have is, have you made up your mind on the software? Because most often the software has been needs to be managed by the marketing team. And if the client already has certain screens out there and already has a software that he uses, why would I interfere and why would I try to change that when he's happy? And then I'm going into, are you happy with your hardware? Can we help you there? Do you need players? Do you want to scale your system? Do you want to sync screens? There are all kinds of variables that I would then ask. I think one parameter that we always try to build into our, let's say hardware ecosystem is a certain level of scalability. We try to help clients that are in the professional world, but also help clients that are just getting started and seek for something that's entry level and compelling, offers them a good value. And I think you don't have to be afraid when you start with signage, because you can start small and then you can grow from there, and you can buy a simple screen, as you said, and theoretically just use a USB stick and help your client to push his content to the audience by just driving it with integrated media players. If you want to go bigger and you scale it up and say, I have like 8 screens running now. This is a bigger infrastructure. I think I need a player. Can I install the player on your hardware? And this is how you can progress. Even
I think one of the things I see a lot is, we've got those screens, there's maybe 3 or 4 screens together, either in a line together, and the content is dynamic across those 3 screens. That's when it moves from being, oh right, yeah, that's the TV on a wall,
USB stick, because the screens need to talk to each other, and ideally you do this with the right player. And this is where to a certain degree, there's a daisy chain function on our screen. So even if you would just have one player, so the engine that runs the content, you connect 2 screens and you sync 2 screens basically with being perceived as one picture. But once you do more, I even recommend clients to say, like, go to a BrightSign player, because that does everything for you. It's all managed within the system, and it's been much, much better engineered than trying to do this in other ways.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial potentially, because yes, I've worked in software and I'm now working at a hardware company, also dealing with software guys. But I think the question really isn't which one comes first. The question doesn't need to be about technology. It needs to be about asking the customer, what are you trying to do?
Okay.
Understanding from their perspective, what's your problem that you're trying to fix? A bit like, if you want to buy a car, you don't say, I want to, well, if you have, multiple bank accounts, etc., and an endless pot of money, then maybe you just say, I want to buy a Porsche because I want to, as opposed to thinking about the reason why you might want to change a car, right? And it could be the time of whatever, got kids, so therefore you're going to take that into account. But the same for the customer, what's their problem? Because the technology is there, whether it's the software, whether it's the hardware. If they need to update the menu boards, like you said, is it going to be a 3-menu array, a 4-menu array? And then you work it backwards from that, understanding, okay, how often is my content going to change? And I talked about it earlier, we always, I say always, but a lot of the time forget to ask that question, which really then drives and impacts what kind of software and what kind of hardware. Because if you were to say to somebody, okay, it's QSR, so quick service restaurants and the menu boards, then not all CMSs are built for that, because you've got to take into consideration you've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner type menus, and you can do the day partying and everything else. But on the same token, the same hardware may not be suitable for that than you would have on a one-screen basis. So by understanding what that content is, how often it's going to change, will then guide you to see, what kind of...
Actually, wasn't a controversial answer. Maybe I wasn't clear with what I said. When you approach the client, it's precisely what you need to find out.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant with, do you already have a software or not?
Right.
Then we'll stick to this. But it's like fundamentally the client defines what solution he needs. And when he doesn't have made his choice, then, we guide him through what he might need. So I in this case, I fully agree.
Yeah. And in terms of, obviously, the CMS, it's an important part of it. How much does a reseller really need to know about the CMS in order to effectively deploy it? What's your recommendation there?
There's two ways of looking at it. We have, we work with partners who, I would say, do a full managed service. So they sometimes take the content from the customer, but they'll manage where the content goes, how often it changes, etc., based on guidelines. And then there are others that will just say, here's your software, because the end customer said, I want to have the management capabilities myself. So they'll do that by themselves, in which case they don't really need the knowledge of the software. I would personally say the only way to fully believe and trust that the solution that you're providing is the right one is to have a play around with it yourself. And it's nice that all the CMS partners will provide you with a 30-day trial. And what have you.
Certainly the ones we work with have been really, really helpful with that, and demo licenses, test licenses, whether that's for a month or for a longer period. They've been, the CMS partners themselves, certainly the ones that we're working with. I mentioned Ibexi, we've had some good conversations with now Signage, with Deneva, also with
Navori.
Exactly, thank you, Nils. Yeah, we've some really good conversations there. They've been incredibly supportive, and that's why we'll continue to work with those and potentially some others, depending on the different countries. But I guess coming back to the hardware, Nils, what's the first thing that a reseller needs to get their head around? Because on the hardware side, there's 3 elements really, isn't it? There's the screens, there's the player, there's the mounting options. Where should a reseller concentrate first?
First, I think is I would figure out what. So let's assume you roughly made up your mind in regards to the software, because I think that is in my opinion, more critical element on Signage than the hardware, to be honest. Because the hardware is the driving source, or is the surface that brings the message to the audience. And then you need to look at what hardware is compatible with my software. And that's the reason why we also try to have as many CMS companies supported as possible, because in case the choice of the client has already been made, then we can tell them, okay, look, we have an infrastructure of different hardware screens, different sizes. Where do you want to put this? How long should this last? We have clients that say, you know what, I'm going to change my environment like every year or every 2 years. I'm not investing into a tremendously amount of, let's say, high class display when I don't know if I need to use this 86-inch screen in the next year or two. With an airport, it's vastly different. An airport installs screens that are mission critical, and they said, I want the best of the best. I want a reliable product that never breaks. And I think it's industry known that Sharp has engineer screens with a failure rate is so dramatically low that you'll never been let down.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's funny. You reminded me. You flew in. I think last time you came over, you flew in through Humberside Airport, which of course is one of Britain's leading airports. And
have you got a picture of yourself at Humberside?
I have no. It's very rare that I fly out of Humberside.
I took one actually, and because I was in the waiting area and I looked at the screen and I thought like, it's just an old NEC screen. Let's see how old it is. And I think it was 14 years or something.
Like 15 centimeters deep.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but it's still operational and it still runs. And back in the days, it was like, like technology of technology, best of the best. And it still runs. We had a screen at the current ISE show, which was like almost 20 years old, which we got from one of the airports. And I think that's
like in the nostalgia corner.
And but that's where
the Antiques Roadshow.
But that's I think what you need to ask yourself, and we live also in an environment and in a world where sustainability and reliability is being preached, and it's not about I toss the hardware every year. I mean, we're talking about we just had this conversation about cell phones. Do I need to toss my cell phone every other year? Potentially not, because it still operates in 3 or 4 and 5 years.
Yeah, but I do though.
Okay, but
that's consumer grade versus
I brought
commercial,
this,
right?
and I think it's also for the audience and for the people that listen to this podcast. I think what I think is important to understand when we're talking about player and hardware, most people look at the screen, and here comes a little educational piece within this podcast. But I think this demystifying thing of SoC, system on chip, is something that I think people need to understand signage, because there are multiple ways of how you can work with a player. And a player can either be, since we have smart TVs, can be integrated in one of those professional displays, and then it's been called system on chip. But you, to a certain degree, locked into what the manufacturers put into the screen. And it's the same for us and other vendors as well. And you want to make sure that what we as a manufacturer put in has a long breath and can be updated for a long time and all this. The second option you can have is you utilize a screen with a modular computing, and this is what Sharp offers. So we can either use a Raspberry Pi, which runs all the CMS software, you slot it into the PC, into the display, and you're operational. Or you use an SDM interface. And now recently just launched, we have a fantastic new option, also utilizing a BrightSign player that you can slot into the display.
So the BrightSign player would be like that.
It's similar to this,
yes. Best of both worlds, yeah?
It's best of both worlds. And I think it's more or less, there's like 4 options I would recommend, or I think that people can choose from. It's you have your USB stick and you use an internal player, but you can't change the software. The second option is you use an SoC display, which can run multiple software, all those like CMS companies that are hopefully compatible with the hardware. The third option is you have modular computing, and you can decide which player do I want to use. In 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, the display is still good. I want a new PC. I want a different BrightSign player. You exchange it, you're good to go. And your display lasts longer. And option number 4 is I just buy any screen and I connect an external player, which like BrightSign offers as well.
And I think what's important that we haven't touched upon is, because somebody that might be new to this and listening for the first time thinking, well, you've just given me loads of different options for hardware. And the customer may already have some other screens, different brands. So what happens to the software then? And the point is that those CMS partners, certainly the ones that we work with, do have the breadth of you can mix and match your fleet, for want of a better word, to say that actually I can manage the Sharp NEC screen or a Raspberry Pi or a BrightSign device in the same platform. Of course, we're not touching upon the differences of what each hardware can do, because there are. Not everything is built the same. But from a CMS perspective, you don't necessarily have to change that every time that you get a new piece of hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all really, really good points. So, all right, you've convinced me. I'm a BlueStar reseller. I want to get into digital signage. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity there. What are the mistakes I need to look out for? What pitfalls am I most likely to fall into, and how do I avoid them?
Well, your point about you change your phone every year or every 2 years. That's
I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah, but most people do, right?
Yeah.
That's how long the contracts last. and so they want the latest and greatest, whatever. That's because those are consumer devices that are built for that kind of stuff. So they're not built for living in a dusty old place for 15 years, which is, where we come into from a...
You've not seen my house.
Commercial grade environment, manufacturing plants, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely the one is do not fall into the pitfall of buying a consumer grade TV for a in-window display or anything else, because you will end up having to replace it. And we all know what happens if you buy cheap.
Because on the surface of it, they look kind of similar, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell as soon as you try to lift one up, there's a weight difference in the screens. But yeah, it would appear to be an easy mistake to make, right?
Yeah, but one simple thing why there's a huge differentiation between a professional display and a, let's say, smart TV you can buy in an electronic shop is the haze level of the surface of the screen. And haze level means, does this screen reflect other light? And at home, where you watch a movie, you often do not have the situation where there's sunlight or lights from the ceiling creating reflections. So in that case, it would not disturb you. You have this big, deep black, and you have a glossy screen. Same on some laptops. But in all the professional worlds, we want matte displays. We want no reflections. And that's what we, for example, cover across the board on all screens. So that's, I think, the first thing clients should also evaluate when buying hardware. Is the screen reflection free?
Yeah, all good points, yeah.
And well, ultimately, everybody's in the business of making money, right? If you're a reseller, you're not doing it for fun. Well, maybe you do, lifestyle choice, but at the end of the day, you're trying to make some sort of profit. And if you're buying the product that you're then ending up having to replace it in an 8-month period, that's your margin gone all there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Is there a mindset shift that resellers need to make, would you say, between sort of selling a product to delivering an outcome? Is that part of what you're saying there?
I would say so, yeah. I think we need to move away from selling a bill of materials of, this is your hardware, that's your screen, that's your bracket, that's your media player, and that's your software, to actually, going back to what we said earlier, understand what the customer's problem is and how that's going to fix it. The technology is there, don't worry about it, because that will help you. You just need to understand and have those questions and say, this is the solution that I'm providing. I'm providing a solution rather than hardware, piecemeal approach. You're actually getting yourself more bedded in with that customer. So there's less chance of them moving away and switching to somebody else because they provide their IT or video conferencing, but because you've kind of given them this educational approach to providing a solution to their problem.
Yeah, good stuff.
I think you, to a certain degree, I think when you go into digital signage, but it's potentially the same with selling POS systems or something, I think you need to be prepared to a certain stage to be able to help your client, and not just like, as you said, you sell a box, you're a box mover, and say like, oh, glad that this has been sold. The chance in the signage world that the client will come back and have another question or need some guidance or something is potentially bigger than you're just selling mounting options.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you as a reseller need to be prepared, and also need to have. I mean, you also need to see it from the perspective of, it can be a lot of fun because you all of a sudden you talk about very different things than the holes in the wall and the length of a screw. You might get involved into content, into like psychological things that the client wants to communicate, and how do I do this best? And
how many of your new burgers do you want to sell this week?
but actually, that's a good point. One of the questions that a reseller could ask to such an establishment that has printed menus is like, how much does it cost them to change those menus on a year-to-year basis, right?
Yeah.
And because then they're limited in terms of the changes in their menu, because they can't physically print things fast enough and ship them to the relevant location. That's your solution sell, as opposed to, here's a player that can get content on the screen for you.
Yeah. And one thing that's been done already, and you see this with ESLs and supermarkets, all that, you can have this dynamic content that's linked to an ERP system, and the better CMS systems, they have a link to the amount of, let's say, food or storage space that's out there. If the bananas go down, or you have way too many bananas, you can theoretically reduce the price in the last hour of the shop and sell. Okay, let's have a sale on banana with a poster. Good luck.
Yeah. That all really, really good points. Let's make it really practical. If I'm a reseller and I'm thinking, you know what, let's give this a go. Let's get into this. I want to start getting involved in digital signage. I want to start looking at how I can offer this to my customers. Can each of you give me, it doesn't have to be 3 different things, but give me 3 concrete things that a reseller that's looking to enter the signage market should be considering? What 3 practical things that they could do?
Yeah, and I think the first thing is basically just stop researching and start doing it. So have the conversations with your existing customer base. Look at them from a signage perspective. Open up your CRM, whatever you might be using, and who's your active accounts? Are they in retail? Are they in hospitality? What are they in food service? Whatever. And do they have a customer-facing physical space? Because if the answer to those questions is yes, then pick the top 5, maybe because you've got the closest relationships with them, and have that signage conversation when you next go on site.
Yeah, good one. Nils?
Yeah, another one where we, to a certain degree, even didn't touch base on is a signage solution can even offer an opportunity to the reseller in case he has the network or he has the, reach within his network and clients to even generate money. If you think about the whole topic of retail media, which is another huge element which comes with signage, it's one of the fastest growing areas within signage itself. And once you start digging into this and looking into, hey, I can run advertise, I can even make money with running advertisement in retail networks, then it becomes super exciting. And,
so retail digital media, for people who don't know, is basically where the retailer, for example, themselves rents out space on the signage screens in their stores to advertisers, whether that will be like drinks, Coca-Cola, or
whatever,
cleaning products, whatever it is.
Correct.
So that they're paying for the adverts on the screens in the store, probably near their products in the store, to encourage people at the point of purchase to actually buy more of their products. So much, much more targeted than TV advertising.
Retail media is really valued as the 3rd biggest wave in advertisement. And this is what you can see on reports and everywhere. In the past, it was Google, then it was social media, and now retail media is one of the driving forces for growth. Mm-hmm. And as you said, just get started. If you want to participate on this wave, you don't wait. See if your network of clients and your relationships you already have, or the ones that are prosperous clients, would allow you to grow into this segment. Mm-hmm. Get started and learn.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that probably flows in nicely into the pick a vertical and go deep. Don't spread yourself too thin, because you need to understand, especially if you're starting out first, if your strength is already in restaurants because you're providing POS systems and kiosks and what have you, stick to that. You already know the customer, you already know the type of use cases. Add in one more, which will be a signage aspect. It's not going to be a burden on the business. But I think a lot of the time, when people are first starting out in the industry, they kind of say, I want to be something to everybody, so they can, create this funnel of trying to get as much business as possible. But actually the opposite, I'd say, would be true, because the more you know about that specific vertical market, the better you'll become at it, and be that trusted advisor to your customers.
And the great thing is, we've got such a huge network of resellers. We've got thousands of resellers just across Europe, and if you then extrapolate that out into the many end user relationships that they have, from the very smallest, burger restaurant, chicken shop, all the way up to Tesco and Carrefour and the huge retailers that we have, Inditex. We've got through our network of resellers, we have so many relationships there, and without even talking about healthcare, manufacturing, transport, and logistics. So the relationships exist already. And this is, hopefully, I think as part of the conversation today, we've demystified this enough to get some people at least interested in, I can give that a look. It doesn't sound as though it's going to be the most complicated thing in the world to do. Last question to both of you. I'll go with you first, Nils. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a reseller that's maybe on the fence about entering the digital signage market?
First of all, don't be afraid. If you even if you don't think you have the expertise, it's worth to dive into it and just get started. And also, I think we're all accessible. So via you, via our companies. I mean, everybody can reach out to us, and also when there's questions, we're more than happy to help and guide and give advice and share our experience. I mean, so it's
perfect. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd say that, don't think of it as there's, a high barrier to entry to, and complexity, because there really isn't. The technology is there to support any kind of deployment. The biggest barrier is the mindset shift of saying, okay, let me just ask the question, not do you want digital signage, but how can I help you fix this problem?
Yeah.
And then the rest, like you say, the infrastructure is there, the vendors are there to help you out, and they've built up the programs to get the most out of things.
Yeah, sounds like that quote. I can't remember who came up with the quote, but whether you think you can do it or you think you can't, you're probably right.
Right.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, that was.
Gonna have to Google that later.
Somebody, I can't think of who said that, so I'm going to attribute that quote to myself. Richard Austin, 2026. Yeah, no, look, it's been great talking to you both today. It's been a real pleasure. Always great to catch up when we do get together. So thank you very much for being part of this. It's been an honour talking to you. So
thanks for having us.
Likewise, and one piece of knowledge I take with me next time. I'll watch Jurassic Park tonight and we'll be better prepared for next time.
You've referred a couple of times in this conversation to dinosaurs, and I've got to say that we did talk a little bit about that before we started recording.
But no squirrels.
We didn't get onto squirrels, did we, today? That was
true.
In the preparation. Yeah. There is a context to this that you have no idea. People watching this have no idea what it is that we're talking about. But
it's a good
probably
one.
Best
It's probably time to bring this to a close, I would say. So it's been a really interesting conversation. I think that one of the things that I've taken away from this is that this is a really interesting market to get into. I knew that already. I thought it was complicated, but it's actually not quite as difficult as you would think it would be, certainly compared to the barriers to enter in some other markets. We've got, with the vendors that we work with, we have I think all of the right conditions that we need to help people enter the market. We've got a huge amount of support for BlueStar resellers. We're building up a really nice resource base on the website. The market's growing. The need from customers is real, and we'd really like more of our resellers to get involved in this. And we'd love to talk to you about it. So you can contact me, you can contact your local account manager, your local business development manager. We'll put a link in the show notes to the Sharp website. We'll put a link in there to the BrightSign website, so check those out as well. We've got quite a lot of information in our ISV program about the CMS partners we work with. There's a wealth of information there. We'll put all these links together for you in the show notes so that you can refer back to those. But if you've made it this far, it's a bit of a longer podcast than we normally do, but there's a hell of a lot to cover, wasn't there? So really, really appreciate you sticking with us, and we will see you again soon on the next Ask Blue podcast. Thanks for listening.